I work at Project Vietnam Foundation. I direct the public health programs, and they brought me on board in January 2020, right before COVID. So I'm still involved with COVID response. Right now is sort of the post-pandemic response. So we're looking at mental health issues in the Little Saigon community. I was actually born here in SoCal in 1989. I just remember going to Little Saigon all the time as a kid, some shape or form. I was always, and it was so interesting to go from Irvine, which is 20 minutes away, and seeing how different the stores were. Even seeing, and I didn't understand as a kid, but the language thing aspects too. So that was interesting. So I didn't go to public education in Little Saigon, but I did go to school for martial arts and piano. As a kid, it was called like, it was effectively like a Buddhist Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts camp, even learning Vietnamese was a thing, but I didn't go to public school, but I did go to different types of schooling. My mom and dad actually came here in 1975, but they didn't relocate to SoCal first. My mom was actually her and her family were directed to Baltimore. Dad was sent to Buffalo, New York. Mm-hmm. But they both ended up coming to SoCal, and it was a combination of the weather. Vietnamese were inclined to not snow. Everyone's resettling, kind of find this, everyone's talking story. People are saying, "Oh yeah, there's a great place in SoCal." Garden Grove, Westminster. At the time, still, but I guess it was sort of word of mouth. Everyone kind of heard "Oh, this is a good place to go." My mom's side, specifically a doctor, told my mom's family that they should really relocate to SoCal because my late grandma at the time was developing a lot of health issues. They say she's not doing well with the cold. I heard that there's a lot more Vietnamese in SoCal. I think, and why don't you consider going to Southern California? So that's how I ended up here. I don't know how to describe it other than there's a feel, an aesthetic to my parents' generation and how they set up shop and different businesses. Now Little Saigon is still the same, still got that, this is my parents' generation setting up shop. And there's also a contingent of my generation, born here, and they're very much a very strong entrepreneurship mentality. So it's really interesting just from a shop perspective. You see, older shops where, they're in the middle of strip malls or just kind of tucked in the middle of, I don't know what that is, but it's really delicious food versus someone who obviously my generation, and you see it, you're like, oh yeah, that's hip, I think, but yeah, you see this. There's a very obvious contrast of older businesses and almost this gentrification process happening. I don't think we're unique in displacement, but I think we are, at least in recent memory, it's a combination of such a large diaspora. Unfortunately, it raises the Cambodian and Laotian refugees as well, but that's another discussion. I think the challenges that a lot of Vietnamese face is obviously resettling, PTSD, mental health, intergenerational trauma. We all know how that rewires your brain. I'm very sadly one of those anti-Asian hate crime statistics. I was harassed by a very mentally ill woman, probably unhoused on public transit, and no one did anything. And I wasn't surprised. I said, I noticed I'm in public health, so I have to look at this data all the time. I'm like, it was bound to happen at some point. Certain things have definitely improved. Like I've definitely seen more Asian and Asian American representation in media, which is great. I think that at least my generation is more willing to be like, hey, we're really not okay, pushing mental health issues underneath the carpet or saving face. Like we can have these discussions. And things are going better, but we still have a long way to go. Little Saigon is very much its own community, and even the Asian American community in Southern California. I would say non-Vietnamese Asian Americans associate Little Saigon with really, really good food. And to be fair, we do have very good food. They think very highly of Little Saigon. Every Vietnamese community outside of Little Saigon, Little Saigon represents like this is the Vietnamese hub of the United States. I go by location and also what my parents say are good. It's like there's this hole in the wall pho place, and they only serve chicken pho. So like pho, yeah, that's it. Like it's different variations of chicken, and it's just this really like this kind of small little building, almost built in a parking lot. I'm not sure if it's still open anymore, but whenever I think of like the restaurant I go to, that's the place that comes to mind. Every year there's always that. So the streets are just like festive, and some of the streets get like just shut down for the parade, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So April 30th, 1975, they heard an alarm, and they thought it's just a standard evacuation. We'll be back in a couple hours to our house. They just simply, left the house, didn't take anything with them, literally took nothing, locked it, and they just kind of walked in the street. And before they knew what was happening, they just got pushed into a wave, and they were just holding hands the whole time, and they literally just got pushed onto boats, and that was it. And that it just happened sort of like in this flash of like, what is going on, what's happening? Like they didn't know, and then only when they were on the boats they realized, I'm like, oh, we're never seeing our house again. We're never seeing our home. Yeah, now 35 years after the fall of Saigon and after my mom's side of the family was pushed out, we went back to Vietnam as a family. So my aunt, my uncle, my cousins and I, and we got permission to go see my mom's, like their old house. I think what really stood out to me was my uncle kissing the walls. Like I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but he was like, they missed it so much. And it was just that kind of trauma of seeing like, this is my childhood home. It doesn't belong to me anymore. It was, the pictures were just destroyed, and, all the memories just kind of, they managed to salvage some pictures, but, everything was just destroyed by the communists when they took over. So, and thankfully we'll never understand what it's like to go through war, that kind of trauma. But I can at least try and appreciate what my parents have tried to come back, deal with and in their own ways, and try to come back and at least appreciate my situation for what it is and try to make sense of where do we go from here on out.